Welcome to this episode of the Daily Prophet.
Thank you. My name is Daniel. This is Daniel. We're Double Dans.
Double Dans.
Double Dans, that is.
Double Dans.
We are Double Dans.
Well, I'd like to read from Zephaniah 2, 1 through 3. Gather together, O shameful nation. Before the appointed time arrives, and the day sweeps on like chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord comes upon you. Seek the Lord, all you humble of the land, you who do what he commands. Seek righteousness, seek humility. Perhaps you will be sheltered on the day of the Lord's anger.
You look at this in Zephaniah, and we know that the prophets were written to us, but were also initially written about Israel and written for Israel. And we could say, well, because it's a book that was a Middle Eastern book written about Israel, and these prophecies were given to Israel, then it's just pertaining to Israel. But it actually pertains to all of us. And if we just set aside Israel out of the fact and just look at the aspect of a shameful nation, I think America is a shameful nation, don't you?
I do, but then in the book of Jeremiah, it refers to the remnants on the plain. And I believe that if you find yourself believing in Jesus Christ and you don't live in Israel, then you're a remnant on the plain.
Remnant on the plain, yeah.
Jeremiah also states that you should pray for your country, for if it prospers, you too will prosper.
So in light of those two facts, or those 2 points, I'm looking at this thinking that this is for me. This is for America. This is for any nation. But I'm in America, and I'm an American, so this is for me. And so I have to look at this and say, well, before the appointed time of the Lord arrives, before that day comes, before the day of the Lord comes, well, we know that day comes like a thief in the night. So we have to always make sure that we're always prepared for that day, because it could be a second from now, or a second from then, or a second from them. You see what I'm saying? It could be tomorrow. It could be next week.
This is also speaking directly to you who do what he commands.
Yes, it does.
And it's telling those people, seek righteousness, seek humility. Perhaps you will be sheltered on the day of the Lord's anger. So, and I've heard people say, people who believe in Jesus, that they aren't going to church on Sunday because they don't want to do firefighting. And I really don't think church should be considered firefighting on Sunday. I think we need to seek righteousness and seek humility.
Yes.
So that we will be, treated a little bit differently on the day of the Lord.
Yeah, perhaps we'll be sheltered. That it says in, I believe it's in Ezekiel, it says that when the Lord comes back to the earth and sets his foot down on the earth, he's going to split Mount Zion right down the center. And
it's going to create a new valley.
And the people that don't know him are going to try to run through that valley. And I see that all on this day of the Lord. This is all coming on the day of the Lord, the day of his wrath. And personally, I know in my own heart that my personal convictions, as messed up as I am, and as many times as I've fallen and continue to fall, short of his glory, short of whatever, in my own flesh, my own darkness, my own will, my own rebellion, my own, I know that I need to be one who does what he commands. I need to be one that seeks righteousness, seeks humility. So I try to be humble. And I fell short of that, but I do try to be humble. And I feel that if any nation, what God's saying here, that he's saying here is giving us a warning and saying there's time. There's time to do the right things. And right now, it's still today, and there's still time. True?
Yes, that is true. And I would like to bring about that truth by going to the book of Joel. And Joel 1:13 through 14 says, "Put on sackcloth, O priests, and mourn. Wail, you who minister before the altar. Come and spend the night in sackcloth, you who minister before my God. For grain offerings and drink offerings are withheld from the house of your God. Declare a holy fast. Call a sacred assembly. Summon the elders and all who live in the land to the house of the Lord your God, and cry out to the Lord."
To the Lord. Yes. Cry out to the Lord.
And then in Joel 2:12 through 18, even now declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting, weeping, and mourning. Rend your heart and not your garments. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love, and he relents from sending calamity. Who knows? He may turn and have pity and leave behind a blessing, grain offerings and drink offerings for the Lord your God. Blow the trumpet in Zion, declare a holy fast, call a sacred assembly, gather the people, concentrate the assembly, bring together the elders, gather the children, those nursing at the breast. Let the bridegroom leave his room and the bride her chamber. Let the priests who minister before the Lord weep between the temple porch and the altar. Let them say, spare your people, O Lord. Do not make your inheritance an object of scorn, a byword among the nations. Why should they say among the peoples, where is their God? Then the Lord will be jealous for his land and take pity on his people.
Now, we look at this and we can say again, well, this is written to Israel and Israel needs to obey this. But the truth of it is that that all changed with Jesus. And it's not just Israel anymore, but it's God's.
It's also the Gentiles.
It's also the Gentiles, which is God's church, which is Jesus' church.
The remnant on the plain.
Exactly, the remnant on the plain.
Because, also in the book of Jeremiah, it says, wherever you find yourself, whatever country you're in, marry their daughters and have children and teach your children the ways of God.
The ways of God.
And this is a way to ensure that the bloodline continues and that the Word of God continues and godly people are raised up, whatever country they're in. This is the remnant on the plain. We may not be in Israel, and you may not want to be in Israel, because it also says in the Bible, that people in Israel are going to die by sword, famine, and plague. It's not really a happy place to be right now.
No, it's not. During that time or now. As I'm looking at this in Joel, I say, well, okay, it's written to me, because there's many places you can see that, but some of the stuff that's said here is very, very directional. There's some very directional things here. One of the things I noticed right off the bat was he says, don't rend your clothing, but rend your heart. And that talks about, to me, what sprang up in my heart was to be of a contrite spirit, a humble spirit, a spirit that I have a heart that God can work with, a heart of humility, which is what we were talking about before. Rending your clothes is a sacrifice, but God's not interested in our sacrifices as much as He's interested in our humility. He wants us to be humble. He wants us to have a pliable heart, one that
living sacrifices.
Living sacrifices, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Another thing that I saw here too was that he talks about how he said, the Lord has said, the Spirit of the Lord has said, return to me with all your heart and with fasting and weeping and mourning. That is all within intercession. And if you look at what intercession is and what goes on in intercession and what God uses it for, it's very powerful. And I can see in America, there's a lot of places in America where we've lost our vision in that. And popular culture in America, and it may be even worldwide, I don't think it is as much as it is American, but popular culture in America is to actually be chasing the wealth, going after the wealth, going after the money, when God says that's not what He's interested in. He wants us to be interested in breaking our hearts, coming with fasting and weeping and mourning, coming up to the place where God receives our prayers, coming into the throne room and talking to Him about these things. But a lot of us are chasing the wrong things, But He does say here, if you return to me with your whole heart, if you return to me with your heart, with fasting and weeping and mourning, rend your heart, not your garments, and return to the Lord. So He's saying return. So there's still time to return. And
also says He is slow to anger and abounding in love.
Yes.
He says, even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart. So no matter what you've gone through, if you find the opportunity, now is the time. Even now is the time